Welcome to the web. All right, welcome everybody. It looks like we've got about 14 people with us tonight. Thank you for joining us. We are recording this meeting for Plantation Island. Just want to let you all know that. And I also wanted to let you know that all attendees will remain muted throughout the meeting tonight, but we still want your questions and comments. And if you look at your screen, there should be a control panel that you can see that has a little orange arrow, and you can click on that to open up the control panel if you can't see it yet. And at the bottom, there is a question panel. It says type question here. Once we are done with the presentation, I will read the questions and the project team will field them. And one of the reasons we do it this way is so we can get a really good record of what everybody's asking. The county will have this recording, and then I believe they will probably be posting it. So if you need any follow-up or anything, we'll have contact information and all that good stuff for you at the end. I believe that's probably all the housekeeping. If you have any technical issues, feel free to type it into that questions panel also, and I'll do my best to help you sort things out as you need. But that's the best way to communicate with us. With that, I'm going to hand it over here to Brittany with Collier County.
Howdy, everyone. My name is Brittany. I am a Collier County's project manager for this project. I work in growth management department under the capital project planning section, specializing in stormwater projects. In 2019, just to give you a little history, Collier County received the executed agreement for this grant from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. In July of 2020, Atkins North America was selected by committee during the request for proposal procurement process. The contract was awarded in January of 21. This is a environmental survey and engineering preliminary design for the restoration of the Plantation Island waterway system. The waterways serve as a stormwater conveyance to the Barron River and neighboring tidal waters. In 2017, after Hurricane Irma, heavy amounts of debris and silt were discovered throughout the canal system, leading to a degradation of water quality. The primary objective of this project is to perform a pre-designed study to determine the best course of action to restore these waterways. The work will require a collection of physical and ecological data in coordination with permitting agencies, a preliminary design and dredging and hydraulic circulation. The data will provide options to enhance the waterway system. These reports are all grant requirements. Now, I'd like to hand this over to Mark from Atkins, North America, to present you with some additional details on this project.
Well, thank you, Brittany. I appreciate it. Yeah, as Brittany was saying, the project is funded by the DEP. So, water quality is certainly one of the things that we're interested in as part of this project, and it was funded by this grant right here. And then I wanted to show a little bit of a couple of historical photos, just mostly for kind of historical perspective, and maybe for somebody who has never seen that. So as you can see down there in the lower left of the screen, Plantation Island was kind of developed in 1969, and that's kind of the historical condition that we would kind of be looking to restore.
Mark, this is Jennifer. I'm going to interrupt you. We just see your desktop right now.
Oh, geez. Thought I was sharing my screen.
You are sharing your screen, but I think it's the wrong one.
Understand. Apologize. Can I unshare really quick?
Yep, go ahead.
So I'm not sharing right now, right?
Correct.
Okay. Which screen can you see right now?
The gray one,
My desktop?
your desktop.
Okay. Jeez.
Everyone can just bear with us. We actually did do a dry run of this.
All right. So I'll start over. Can you see the screen you're supposed to now?
No, it's still the gray one.
Okay. Guess we should have went through this before. What about now?
No, but it's
Still
still your
gray?
desktop. There's like 5 icons on the top. 6 maybe.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yay! Yeah, that
All
looks
right.
more like it.
My apologies. All right, so I guess I'll start kind of back at the beginning here. Just the DEP has funded this project, and water quality is a big portion of it. And this is just the grant that the county has used for this project. So now I've got some historical photos right here that hopefully you can see this time. Down on the lower left there now is Collier or Plantation Island when it was developed back in 1969. And that's sort of the condition from that time when it was first developed that we'll be planning to restore this project back to. Some of those other historical photos are just there so you can see some history of the area and see that Everglades City was kind of built before 1950s. So here's the project limits. As you can see on the screen, the blue shaded area is going to be our area of the project study. Each of the canals has been labeled with just a letter, and really that's not an official name. That is just for internal purposes, essentially for our project, so we know which canal is which. And tonight, when you're asking questions, you can certainly refer to those canal names, and that will let us know kind of where you're talking about. So this is a sheet that just talks a little bit about what the life cycle of a coastal dredge project is. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done for a project like this, but kind of before we do anything and start moving any material around, this feasibility study needs to be done. And you can see right there, that's kind of the first part of this that we're at right now. Shelby?
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our objectives for this project. We'll start with determining the baseline conditions within the project limits, and then we'll look at how that relates to the historical conditions. And then by the end of the study, the goal is to have developed a restoration plan for the canals. Along the way, we'll identify opportunities for water quality improvements and then look at some of the permitting requirements. And it's especially important in this area to be able to identify the potential ecological impacts because Plantation Island does sit within the Big Cypress National Preserve and borders the Everglades National Park. So on the next few slides, I'll walk through some of the activities associated with the study that you might notice happening in the area. On the next slide, we'll talk about mangrove trimming. So several of the canals are severely constricted with overgrowth, as I'm sure many of you know. If you weren't already aware, there are some special rules governing mangrove trimming and how and who can do it. So we're required to use a specially certified crew to complete that work. They're currently sorting out some logistics for staging areas, and they're most likely going to be on site the week of April 5th, so a couple of weeks from now. And you'll expect to see several small boats with crews using hand and power tools to trim the mangroves for survey equipment access. On the next slide, we'll talk about vegetation mapping. The permits require mapping of the protected vegetation, which in this case is the mangroves. So you'll see some Atkins biologists, probably similar to these two in this picture, on site determining the types and distribution and density of the vegetation in the area. So that'll look like a small boat with some biologists collecting data, and that's probably going to happen around the beginning of May. The next slide is about fish and wildlife surveys. So I mentioned before that this is especially important for the permitting agencies because of where Plantation Island is located. They want to know about any potential impacts, particularly to listed species and the habitats that they use. So in this case, we're primarily looking for wood storks above the water and oysters and seagrass in the water. You can expect to see a small crew of Atkins biologists collecting data primarily from the boat. And then for the in-water surveys, you'll probably notice a few of our scientific dive team bobbing around out there as well. On the next slide, we'll talk about hydrographic surveys. So the surveys are going to happen in 2 phases. The first survey will be an investigatory survey, which is scheduled for mid-April right now. And so that's here in the next couple of weeks. And that's going to identify areas of interest for further investigation. And then the second survey will be happening sometime in May. And that's going to be a more detailed survey to help come up with some volumes and approximate the historic sea bottom from when the canals were originally dredged in the 70s. So again, you can expect those guys out there in May. Both surveys are going to be performed by Oceanside Solutions, and they'll be out there in a boat similar to what you see in this picture here. They'll just be cruising along each canal. And then you're probably also likely to see some land-based surveying happening. And those guys will be pretty obvious that they're surveyors. It'll be a crew of 2 to 3 people walking around with survey equipment. So you can expect to see them in April and then again in May. The next slide talks about water quality sampling. So in order for us to establish a baseline for the current water quality in the canal system, we need to take a series of measurements over the course of a few weeks. These measurements are going to give us water depths, temperature, and other general characteristics at various points in the canal. And then we'll also be doing some nutrient testing and oxygen content and things like that. So you might see Atkins crew working from a boat or land to collect water samples similar to these pictures. And then the last slide I wanted to talk about was public engagement. So we've got a virtual meeting room set up with a lot of information, and Mark's going to talk more about that in a few minutes. But we also invite everyone to ask questions that you might have in the question box during this presentation, and we'll answer them after we're done here.
All right, thank you, Shelby. So here you can see the overall kind of just the project schedule for most of the major activities that are going to be going on. One thing here to note there at the bottom is that these are preliminary or time frames for right now that are planned, but of course when you're doing a lot of this work outside, Florida weather can always impede that sometimes. So bad weather or some other unforeseen circumstances could possibly delay this, just for your own information, but this is what we're kind of planning to stick by right now and should be able to meet it. So some specific things over the next few months, I think you've heard some of that from Shelby there, but just to kind of recap that over the next few months, the mangroves trimmers will be out there, not next week, but the week after, and that's pretty set, I think, at this point. So be looking for them out there that week. Shelby just mentioned the bathymetric survey will be going on in mid-April, and maybe a second one into May potentially. And really through June or July, you're going to see various survey crews out there, ecological, topographic, bathymetry, collecting all kinds of really good data that we're going to need to get this project completed. We're kind of targeting a July or early August for a next public meeting, which would be like a progress update of what we found, what's going on out there. So that's kind of what's coming up in the next few months. So anyways, that's pretty much sums up our little presentation here. Really appreciate your engagement. Thank you for joining us. Apologies again for the technical difficulties at the beginning. There in the lower left, there is a QR code for a Collier County customer satisfaction. So they would really appreciate it if you guys could take that form and give them some feedback. They take that seriously and would really appreciate it. If you can scan that little thing with your phone, the website will pop up and you can just go on there and take your survey. In the upper right there is the virtual meeting room. And that's going to be up all the time. It's actually up and going now. And it contains essentially the same information that a lot of it, essentially what we just talked about tonight and went over, but it's in a virtual setting. So if some of the information you didn't get, or your neighbor or somebody else was not able to make it tonight, you could certainly point them to that room or that link there so that they could go look at it and has more information. We'll continually be updating that. Some of the information will stay there, but others will be kind of updated periodically as we go, as things change. I was going to just show a quick snippet of that. Hopefully, if I can do this without any problems. So the virtual meeting room, can you guys see that? Jennifer?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is good. This is kind of what it looks like. See a lot of the same information here and all these boards, so you can kind of just pan around yourself. If you click on one of these, that should show up as a PDF. Let's see if it comes up. There you go. So if you click on one of these, you can see it a little bit better, so you don't get that kind of curvature perspective on those. So anyway, I think we'd be happy to take your questions right now. And I think Jennifer will be reading those off as you put them in. There at the bottom right too is contact information for myself and for Brittany. I'm the project manager for the consultant, Atkins, and Brittany again is the project manager for the county. So again, we appreciate your engagement, and please ask some questions and we'll go ahead and start answering for you.
Yeah, Mark, one of the questions we received was, with water quality improvements, does that require a public or private sewer system?
I'll take that question for you. This is Mark Stroik with Atkins. One of the scenarios that we're looking at as a potential is a hydraulic connection additional to what's already in place. And so you could imagine there are several canals that they have restricted flushing just because they're kind of a dead end street, if you will. One of the scenarios we're looking at is connecting several of these canals to the river to help facilitate that flow and flushing of the system. Obviously, anytime you go hooking something like that up, it is kind of complex, and there can sometimes be some unintended consequences, and that's why we'll be studying it. But we are certainly looking at that as an alternative.
Great, thank you. And then next question, is Halfway Creek in the plan to be dredged?
Mark, if you are still controlling the slide deck, would you do me a favor and flip to the project map to help me answer this question? Thank you, sir. The actual extents of where the dredging will or will not occur are not yet determined. At this point in time, we are surveying Halfway Creek, and we will identify if there is a significant shoaling issue along Halfway Creek. However, we're anticipating, it's our expectation, that the dredging will be limited to the study area that you see there in that shaded blue-gray color. Now that said, we have not ruled out dredging in Halfway Creek, although we don't anticipate that it's going to need to be required. But again, I reiterate that we are surveying portions of Halfway Creek to identify the conditions of the overall site.
Thanks, Mark. People wanted to know if you can expand more on the sewer question, still, as to whether or not it'll require public or private. Do we have an answer to that?
Could you ask the question for me again? So maybe
Sure,
maybe
yeah.
reread it.
Will water quality improvements require a public or private sewer system?
Okay, I misunderstood the question when you first asked it. Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, the question is really related to, if I simplify it a little bit, am I going to need to look at replacing my septic system with a sewer?
I think that's what that means, yes.
Yeah, I mistook it for something completely different. My apologies. At this point in time, no. We are not looking at inputs from septic, et cetera, or looking at an option to replace with septic with sewer.
Okay. I think that probably is good. It looks like that's all the questions we have right now. Are we, the slides will be made available on the website, correct? The PowerPoint?
Yeah, yes, it will. It looks like another question came in, Jennifer.
Oh, perfect. Are you going
yes,
to
it will.
put culverts?
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe. The answer to the question, are we going to put culverts in? The answer is maybe, and that was the original question I mistook off the get-go. But that has to do with improving the hydraulic flushing in the canal. We are looking at that as an option. One or several culverts. We're looking at them in several different scenarios to see what may make sense for the project site. And if I could build on the question about the sewer system a little bit more, and I think the root of the question was, noting that this project has a lot to do with water quality improvement. Our objective here is to restore the canal to their historical conditions, with the hypothesis that in doing so, that the increased flushing throughout the system will give us a benefit, such that we might not need to look at a sewer improvement project.
Okay. And there's more to that question. It's a separate question though. How deep will the canals be dredged, and will they be much wider?
It's a great question. The simple answer is that our dredge depth is yet to be defined. Our dredge width is yet to be defined. The trick here is to restore the canals to their pre-existing condition when they were originally built back in the 60s and 70s, way back when. And the reason that that's important is that under permitting statutes, let's suffice it to say that permitting a restoration project is a much more simple, quick, and less expensive process than permitting an expansion project that would go deeper or wider than it ever was stretched in the past. And our challenge here, one of the things that makes this project kind of unique, is that we do not have the benefit, as far as we know, don't have the benefit of what we would call as-built drawings or surveys from when the project was built way back when. And we deal with this a lot, and we have an expectation for what the bottom probably looks like, but we're not going to know that for sure until we get in there and we do our survey work. And so the short answer to your question is we don't know what the channel dimensions will be yet, but that our aim is to restore them to what they were when the canal system was originally built.
Perfect. So then the next question kind of goes along with that of when will the dredging take place?
That's a great question. If I could ask Mark to advance the slide, or I guess it would be behind this one, to the typical life cycle of a dredge project, that would be really great. So what you see on here is this is the normal cycle of dredging. You know, of course, you dredge it once and shoaling naturally occurs, you know, throughout the years, and you monitor it. And then at some point in time, which is where we are today, we identify there is a need for some dredging to occur. The first step in that process, which is where we are, phase one, is this feasibility study. And you folks in your community are really fortunate to have this grant to be paying for this right off the bat and hopefully get some additional improvement other than just the navigation. That process we're expecting is going to be concluded this year. At the conclusion of this phase one feasibility study, we are going to provide, Atkins is going to provide to the county a recommended alternative. And we're actually going to have another one of these workshops to present that recommended alternative to everybody who's interested. And then from there, that recommendation is going to come with a proposed channel width, channel depth, proposed areas for dredging, all the proposed modifications, whether or not there may or may not be culverts that connect into the system. And it's also going to come up, it's also going to hypothesize what we can expect on timeline to permit the project and what we can expect for cost to permit, to finalize design, fully permit it, and finally construct it. And so your question was, when can I expect to see dredges in my backyard? I think what I can tell you about that is we don't have action to proceed with physical construction right now, but this project is going to identify the specifics needed to evaluate a potential waterway restoration in the future. So I'm sorry, but I can't give you a date on that, but I can tell you that by the end of this year, the county will have the information they need for everyone involved to be able to make a decision on when, if and when a project will occur.
Perfect. If it is determined the older septic tanks are leaking sewage into the waterways, will you then recommend public sewer? I don't know if that's within the scope of this project or not.
That's a pretty good response right off the bat. It is not within the scope that we are specifically looking at that that parameter, and it would probably be I would probably be getting way ahead of myself if I were to say hypothesize a recommendation on a maybe. But I would, you know, in general, that concept, we see that throughout the state. In general, the spirit of that question is the way things tend to go. However, I will reiterate that identifying sources of leachate through septic systems is not the intent of our project. It's not something we're specifically looking for.
Okay. Okay, and looks like I have one more here for right now. Is there a maintenance program on the canals for future problems?
It's a really great question, and I'm glad we still have the life cycle of a coastal dredge project up here. That will be part of our recommendations. Of course, there is a limited amount of hydrographic survey data available to understand the shoaling rates, how fast the canals fill in. That's important to basically estimate, you know, do we expect that you're going to need to dredge once every 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? We have projects that get dredged every 6 months, and we have projects that get dredged every 15 years. And so, you know, it takes a little bit of study to actually predict what that will be. However, part of our recommendation package will certainly include the initiation, at least, of a maintenance plan, of a monitoring and maintenance plan.
Okay, great. So another question building upon the dredging. So the question is, is it my understanding you have the money for the study, but may not have the money for the actual dredging?
Brittany, I think you might be best to answer that question on the county's behalf there.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, right now we have a grant for this project. The grant doesn't cover the total cost of the project, so the county is paying for the rest of it. If we were to go into if this project determined that dredging is possible, and that's the first course of action that we would want to take after we get the results of this project, the county would be able to either apply for another grant, or it's all depending on the fiscal year for that project. I'm not going to say that there is currently money available. I can't predict how our spending rates are in the future. So once we get the results, the faster we move into the next phase of this project, once the study is complete, the more likely we'll have money available. So only time will tell, I guess, is my answer.
And that is all the questions we have for right now. I'll give everybody a few minutes if we've spurred anybody's imaginations. Is there anything else that the project team would like to add to anything we've talked about that maybe we didn't touch on? Or I know we probably have covered a lot of it since we put the presentation together.
I know that maybe the question of additional mangrove trimming was brought to our attention maybe like a week before we started putting together this meeting. I think once the trimmers are complete with the county's portion of the project, if additional trimming would like to be done by the residents, once the county is done and and we have finished our portion, then I think if the trimmers have time available, they could trim the residents, but that's something that the residents will have to get in contact with the trimming company to schedule themselves.
Right, they coordinate directly with them. Perfect.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of the things that I was going to clarify for the group here, is that the mangrove trimming that we are going to be doing, not next week, but the week following, that trimming is targeted towards the minimum that we need to navigate our survey equipment in and out of the canals. And so what you can expect there is a little bit of trimming down the center line, plus some, for lack of a better term, some notches at periodic intervals that go from the center line of the canal to the bank on both sides of the bank, so that we can capture the slope of the channel. So I just wanted to clarify that, so that everyone understood that we're not clearing the whole canals out. It's not a huge project. We're clearing out enough to get our survey boats and our people in and out of the canals.
Yeah. We did get another one that just came in. Is there money from FEMA to at least clean out the debris? It's probably a Brittany question, I would imagine.
That would be me. If we can identify some areas where there is debris left from Hurricane Irma, it's not part of this project, but we do have a separate grant for debris removal. But once we can identify where that debris is, you guys can feel free to contact me, and I can get that first phase of that debris out once we get approval from the grantor, if it's a part of their requirements.
And if I could add, Brittany, part of the work that we're doing is going to be estimating the amount and type of debris, so that that decision could be made with a little bit more education, as far as just how much debris are we looking at here.
That is all we have right now. Do you want to go back and show maybe those historical pictures? I don't know. This is something I like to look at. I thought maybe why everybody else is. Oh, we got another question. Never mind. Don't even go there. Why wouldn't the recommendation for public sewer be introduced? This would be a perfect time before more growth in building begins. Has the county been looking for federal dollars to help this area? It has been devastated by Wilma even before Irma. The area flooded during both, probably causing problems to the aging septic tanks. This area has been so overlooked, hoping there's not going to be any assessments to owners. So I guess it's just a question on, yeah, what does the future hold with this whole, with the septic tank thing?
Oh, I can probably answer that. I did a little digging myself today about some studies that were conducted after Hurricane Irma, and I do realize that there was probably an existing problem before Irma. The problem with septic to sewer conversion is that there's not a lot of infrastructure in place to pipe that sewer from Plantation Island through either to Everglades City's packaging plant, and then or to replace Everglades City's packaging plant and then pump it further on, create a new packaging plant that can handle the sewage, not only for Plantation and Chokoloskee and Everglades City, but also for some of the buildings associated with National Park Service. That is not exactly in stormwater's area of expertise. It's more of a public utilities project that would have multiple studies will have to be conducted. But until that infrastructure is in place, we can't necessarily go ahead with a septic to sewer conversion project for Plantation Island until we have a better idea of what to do with the sewer once we have it. So that
And
helps
Brittany,
answer that question at all.
this is Jerry Kurtz. Let me add a little bit that I heard part of the question about assessments, and typically, just so listeners know, when an area is considered to convert, there is an assessment. You know, I think the municipalities try to keep the assessment reasonable, but you know, in most all septic to sewer conversions, the property owners are assessed, and there's various methods and durations to accomplish that, but not really aware of any that where the property owners don't get assessed to have that improvement come in.
All right. It looks like I was just checking over everything, making sure we've addressed everybody's questions. It looks like it. We have somebody who's asking for the link for the survey, and I'm just trying to make sure that that is the, I was asking, okay, the customer satisfaction survey. Do we have an actual link that we can at least put the slide back up that has the QR code, and maybe the attendees can get that QR code? And then is that also on the county's website, or just, if you hold your phone up to the QR code, if you put it in, if you turn on the photos and you hold your, if you have a smartphone and you hold it up, otherwise I can attempt here to send this in the chat so everybody can see it. I don't believe we have an actual link that is available, but I'm going to see what I can do here. Okay. All right, I will get this posted here in a second. In the meantime, we do not have any other questions. So if you all just will bear with me while I try to get the link here. And then I will send it to everybody so everybody has it. But if you do have your smartphone, if you're not using it for the webinar, you can just take a picture. That's the new fancy way of doing these things. But let me try and see if this works for you all. Alrighty. Do you see that link that I just sent? It's quite a link. So I sent it through the chat, so everybody should have it. Of course, this presentation will be online, so you should be able to get to it that way. Also, if you can get to the presentation, and it's in the virtual room, I believe. So, do you want to pull up that virtual room again, real quick, Mark? Do you have that accessible?
Sure, I can do that. And the presentation, I don't think it's going to be, it probably won't be available until tomorrow. It takes a little bit to
Oh, okay.
upload.
All right.
There'll be a PDF,
right.
but there will be a PDF of it up there. And let
Okay.
me get back to the virtual room real quick here.
So a lot of the slides then from the presentation are available in this virtual meeting room.
I do believe Connie just emailed you the link.
Yep, I'm seeing that right now. I think that's the. It looks like the same thing, but maybe a little shorter. So let me see if what Connie sent. Oh, here's a bit.ly one. This will probably be a little easier for everybody. Well, still comes through quite large, but. I just had a question come in about the muck. Will the muck dredge be hauled away?
Can you hear me, Jennifer?
Yep.
Okay. The answer to that question, what will we do with the muck, the material that's removed from the channel? Yes, it will be hauled off site. We don't know where yet. There's always a multitude of options that we look at. There are even occasions where we have some local residents that are interested in raising the elevation of their lot, and they'd like to donate their lot as a soil placement, dredge material placement site. That happens on occasion. Sometimes the material is hauled away to a landfill. Sometimes we use the material to build something with. Habitat restoration, we've built mangrove islands with it, seagrass shoals with it. We've even, in very large applications, we've even built land for ports for big giant ships. So we look at a multitude of applications. We like, our general preference, just as an industry-wide thing, is to use the material that we take out of there beneficially, if at all possible. We call that beneficial use of dredged material. And the decision on that usually comes down to money and schedule and, of course, the available options. But that's one place that we always look. But of course, it's going to come out of the canals, and it will be removed from the area such that it can't go right back into the canal. That's for certain.
Great. And then will taxes be raised because of the improvements to canals?
Probably
I guess I can answer that one. Not that we're aware of yet. Like we have a grant for this project, and the county is paying the rest ourselves. So I don't see any financial impact to the residents at the moment. But we'll have to see once we get the final results and we go into the construction phase of the project, and we'll know more about that then.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
funding sources are always an issue there, and we do projects of this type all throughout the state. And again, I'll reiterate that you folks are very fortunate in that the county had the foresight to go get a grant to do this study. You're kind of getting a freebie right off the top. Speaking for myself, I live on a canal myself, and with the last time we did one of these, we had to pay out of pocket for it. Some other places they do things like, you know, a special tax, special millage for it, something like that. Those are all options, but no project's been identified yet. So the good news is you got a freebie off the start.
Great. And I think we have answered all the questions. We got quite a few. Great.
You know, something, Jennifer, I would just like to just invite the general public here that's listening on the phone. As you flip through the information that's been provided to you, especially with some of the historical information on the area, if any of you folks out there have information that you think is relevant about the evolution of Plantation Island itself, you know, some of the significant events, the milestones for the waterway system, those would be very appreciated. You know, even just the anecdotal things about, you know, like, hey, when such and such hurricane came through in the early 90s, we saw a spike in something. And then I realized fully that some of these, you know, they're old memories and rumors and things like that, but all that stuff is good information for us. So I would invite you all, if you have information about the history of the project that you think is useful for us in piecing together the historical channel limits, it would be most helpful. And I would encourage you to share that.
And I actually did get an anecdote like that through the questions. We have someone that said that there is debris under the muck. I picked up a pair of sweatpants on my motor. So that is good to know, right?
Those types of things are good to know.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, even
That's
if
the
it's
thing. The people who live and work in these areas have so much, you know, local knowledge that's hard to get when, you know, just through the course of one study. So it is really important to have all that public outreach.
That local knowledge is irreplaceable. Even if it's something as simple as, hey, I have a 25-foot sailfish center console, and I've always been able to get in and out of there until such and such a date. And here's where I live. Those types of things are useful for us. It's a lot of what we do is a science, but a lot of what we do is also an art, and we have to piece together the history of the project to really come up with our best estimate of what we're getting into. So it's all welcome.
Yeah, all good stuff. All right, it's 6:48. Brittany, if you have anything to add?
No, ma'am.
I'll leave
I
it up
think
to
I
you.
just want to say thank you to all the residents that decided to log on and hear our meeting. And I want to say thank you to Atkins, everyone at Atkins. You did a great job.
Quite welcome.
And if anybody has any additional questions that you maybe not think of at the time, but you know, maybe it pops to you tonight or tomorrow, you can always feel free to email us at the county, and we will try to get, you know, any answers we can for you in a timely manner. Especially,
Yeah, Mark, let's pull up that last slide one last time, maybe with the contact information with that email on there. Perfect. Great. Give people a chance to jot that down if they haven't already.
Yeah, there's also an email address on the virtual webinar too that you can send your questions in, and it may not be the same email, but they'll all get to us. So either way is fine. Any of these. So
Great. All right. Well, if you all are good, it looks like the residents have had their questions answered for now. So with that, do you want to give everybody 10 minutes back in their evening? All right. I guess I think that's a yes. Everybody
Super.
gets 10 more minutes to make dinner. Well, thank you all.
Okay, have a great night.
Everybody have a great night. Thanks so
Bye-bye.
much for participating.